What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing my first battles in the Spring Cup where I was able to go on a very positive run, gaining well over 200 elo with a unique but obviously quite effective team consisting of Livani in the lead, Frilish as the safe swap, and Kabuto as the closer. Now it is definitely worth noting I started below 2000 elo after tanking quite a bit trying to get wins in the Open greatly with some very spicy teams including triple centipedes, triple cows, and triple level 50 crustaceans. So obviously if I had started at a higher elo, I doubt I'd have been able to climb as much as I did, but I do still think this is a very solid team even at higher elo. With that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Which Pokemon do you think is a sleeper pick for the Spring Cup meta? Maybe a Pokemon that you've had a lot of success with, but you've hardly seen anyone else using at all. Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. I was heading into the first battle, leading Livani into Galarian Weezing. So, of course, this is not an ideal matchup for me. I'm actually going to stay in initially, swap out, try to catch the move. The opponent actually overfarmed by one Fairy Wind, but still ends up throwing a Sludge, which is resisted damage. And the great thing about Frilish and Kabuto is that they do resist the typical charge moves on that Galarian Weezing. The opponent comes in with Lapras. They fire off the Sparkling Aria. Once again, Frilish going to resist all of Lapras's moves unless they're running Dragon Pulse, which is incredibly unlikely. So, we should be fine here. And Frilish also fairly bulky as well. Despite being a level 50 Pokemon, we are going to be able to reach 3 Nightshades here before the opponent can fully farm me down. Now, unfortunately, a third Nightshade doesn't quite get the KO, but we're going to come in with my Kabuto. I expect the opponent to blind throw an Ice Beam, so I'm going to no-shield this. Ice Beam is resisted damage. I can get the Mud Shot farm down, and the opponent's going to come in with the final Pokemon, a Ferrothorn. Now, of course, this is not a good matchup for Livani, but I've got such a huge energy advantage at this point. And Leaf Blades, despite being resisted, one of the best moves in the game, one of the most energy efficient moves, considering it is only 35 energy. It does 70 damage, which is huge. We can now farm up here to back-to-back Leaf Blades. First one grabs the final shield. I'm able to win CMP in this matchup, and despite being resisted, Leaf Blade takes out Galarian Weezing. They come back in with the Ferrothorn, and all I have to do here is safely shield up the charge. I don't care if they go for a Mirror Shot here. I'm shielding the first move, it's a Flash Cannon, and that's going to be game over. There is no way they're reaching back-to-back charge moves. We can fire off the X-Scissor, go for a second X-Scissor straight away, and from this range, X-Scissor will be enough damage to take out the Ferrothorn, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's top on there. Into next battle, we see Livani into Lapras. So, a fairly neutral matchup here. Of course, we do hit for super effective damage with the Leaf Blades. If they go for Ice Beam, that will also hit for super effective damage. So, I'm going to fire off the Leaf Blade here. Leaf Blade going to be no-shielded. And then I swap. I realize they're over-farming. They're probably on Skull Bash. So, I'm able to catch a double resisted Skull Bash onto my Frilish. We tank that with ease. And we also bait out Serperior now. I'm actually not going to bother throwing a charge move. Just force the opponent to go straight for a Frenzy Plant. Taking out the Frilish. That's absolutely fine with me, of course. Keeping this Serperior away from Kabuto is very nice. We're now going to come back in with Livani, and Aerial is going to hit for double super effective damage. X-Scissor is also going to hit for super effective damage. It doesn't quite get the KO, but it does put them into perfect Shadow Claw farm down range. So I'm happy to use a shield here, go for the farm down. The opponent realizing they're going to get farmed down, so they swap into a Shadow Amoonguss. Now, of course, Amoonguss not going to be running a grass type fast move, so I can actually swap into my Kabuto, and a lot of Amoonguss in this meta are actually not even running a grass type move. This one, however, is running grass knot, so definitely glad I shielded there. We can now fire off a Rock Tomb, gonna debuff their attack. Rock Tomb also grabs the final shield from the opponent, and I'm just barely able to reach an Aqua Jet as they reach a second grass knot. So Aqua Jet, even resisted, does respectable damage there. Of course, the opponent does throw on CMP. Grass knot takes us out, even if they undercharge that. They come back in with Lapras. I can't quite risk going for a full farm down there. We've got so much energy anyway. So Leaf Blade gets the KO. I can now go for one Shadow Claw, fire off the X-Scissor. X-Scissor also taking out the Amoonguss, and then I can just Shadow Claw, farm down Serperior, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's top on there. Into next battle, we see Livani into a Marwile. So, of course, this is definitely not ideal for me. I'm going to say swap straight away into Frilish. Could be a little tricky if the opponent was actually on Astonish rather than Firefang. However, I've only seen Firefang Marwile so far. We swap into our Frilish, and the opponent comes in with a Ferrothorn. Now, honestly, I really need switch advantage here. So even if I have to go down 2 shields, I am going to fight here. So I'm actually going to go for an Ice Beam. Ice Beam going to do marginally more damage than the Nightshade, but it still doesn't quite take them out there. So maybe I should have just gone for Nightshade, as I could have got the farm down and actually got off a lot more energy as well, getting that farm down. But either way, they come in with their final Pokemon, a Quagsire, and this is going to be very tricky for me. But we go for the Nightshade, we grab a shield. I should be able to live a Mud Bomb from this range if it is a Mud Bomb, and it is, so I'm going to go for the Nightshade. Again, should have gone for Ice Beam there. Doesn't really make too much of a difference, however, as one more Charge Move from my Levani will, of course, get the one shot anyways. But we're going to come in with Levani. If they're on Mud Bomb and Stone Edge, then this is going to be incredibly difficult for us. The opponent fires off the Stone Edge. I predict they're going to swap back into Marwell and snipe with the Fire Fang, so we swap into our Kabuto, and the opponent just settles for a power-up punch. That is super effective damage, but ramping up their Fire Fang damage makes literally no difference here. I'm not going to farm up too close to back-to-back charge views. Aqua Jet gets the KO there. I can out-farm ever so slightly. Aqua Jet should be enough damage to get the KO, and it does grab the final shield from the opponent, and Levani did leave with a Leaf Blade loaded. So at this point, the opponent can fire off a Mud Bomb, taking out Kabuto. But of course, we've got the Leaf Blade loaded. We're throwing it straight away, and Leaf Blade takes out the Quagsire, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's top end there into next battle. See a Tentacruel in the leads, of course. Not ideal for me. Going to say swap into my Frillish right away, and the opponent is going to swap into a Credilli. Now, I'm able to outpace them to the Ice Beam as the opponent does stay in with that Tentacruel for a while before swapping out. At this point, honestly, I'd rather they just go straight for Grass Knot here, but the opponent is going to go for a Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb going to debuff my attack. I'm going to overfarm here. I tried to throw on CMP. I do actually later find out that Frillish loses CMP in this matchup, and also they're able to get a full farm down before I reach 3 Ice Beams. Nightshade is debuffed anyways. It doesn't do much damage, and whilst I've got all shields down, the opponent comes out with probably 100 energy, so not really ideal for me in the slightest. I'm going to shield up the first Rock Tomb here. The opponent is at 100 energy, so they fire off the second one straight away. I can still stay in this matchup, though, that we are, of course, double debuffed, but an X-Scissor still will be enough damage to get the KO. So we throw on CMP, X-Scissor takes out Credilli. I'm going to swap out straight away into my Kabuto, and the opponent's going to come in with their Tentacruel. Now, if the opponent goes for a Scald, going to hit for neutral damage. That does quite a lot of damage, but we are resisting the Poison Jab damage. I go for the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb going to connect. It drops their attack, but unfortunately, I just barely miss out on reaching an Aqua Jet there. Aqua Jet might have put them into Leaf Blade range for my Levani, but unfortunately, we don't get there in time. Overheat, massive overkill. It easily one-shots Levani, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's top home there into next battle. See Galissapod in the lead. So, of course, I am going to stay in this matchup initially here. I'm going to wait to see if they're on Aerial Ace or X-Scissor as their secondary charge move, and it is X-Scissor. So at this point, I'm going to farm up 2 back-to-back Leaf Blades here. One should be able to grab a shield, and then the second one probably will connect. So the first one grabs a shield. Levani does actually have access to Leaf Storm, which probably one-shots. Leaf Blade number 2 is going to be no-shielded, and then I swap into my Frillish. I should resist everything unless they're on X's and Aerial Ace, which would be very interesting. But now the opponent comes in with Credilli, and now you can see I do lose CMP in this matchup. But either way, that's fine with me. Rock Tomb again. They go for Rock Tomb. That's just going to allow them to get a full farm down here, which is even more annoying than actually just going straight for the Grass Knot, because you can see I just barely miss out on reaching another charge move. At this point, we're going to come back in with Levani. Of course, I cannot come in with my Kabuto. We're going to shield the move here as they go for another Rock Tomb, and I'm now going to overfarm, but the opponent swaps into Galarian Weezing. We're going to come in with the Kabuto, and again, if they're on Sludge and Overheat, I should resist everything here. So they go for the Sludge. Sludge is still going to do quite a lot of damage, but I can now fire off a Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb going to debuff their attack here, which should allow me to live this next charge move. Not comfortably, but I should be able to just barely hang on and reach an Aqua Jet in time before they fire me down. Now Aqua Jet is going to get the KO up against the Weezing. I'm going to swap out straight away here. There's no point staying in, of course. They will be able to fire me down. We come in with Levani. We wait for the opponent to swap back into their Credilli. I can go straight for Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade gets the KO there. One more Shadow Claw takes out that Galissapod, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up in there. Into next battle, we see Shadow Marwell in the lead. So once again, I'm going to swap into Frillish, and once again, I really need to fight for switch advantage here. The opponent comes in with Jellicent, but they are far behind on energy. So I'm going straight for Nightshade. Nightshade is going to be shielded by the opponent. Unfortunately, I will lose CMP in this matchup, so I don't throw straight away here. The opponent is going to go for a Surf Bait, which is a bit unfortunate for me. I can't really overfarm by too much, so I'm going to go for 1 Hex, fire off the Nightshade. Nightshade going to be no-shielded. It doesn't quite take them out there, as Nightshade did get nerfed this season. again. But we can go for the shield, go for the full Hex farm down, and come out with a decent amount of energy loaded. Of course, we have now maintained alignment here. We can go for the Nightshade. I'm going to overfarm here, and if the opponent tries to commit to a full farm down, I should actually be able to reach 3 Nightshades before they fully farm me down here. The opponent commits to that farm down, and they don't get there. Huge for me. Nightshade is going to get the KO. I'm not going to swap instantly into my Kabuto, and I make a huge mistake here. Honestly, I'm waiting for the opponent to throw here, force them to throw straight away, but Blade Ruff actually gets the one shot there. I did not realize it was going to do so much damage. I wanted them to throw straight away. That way, if I go for an Aqua Jet there, I could then come in with my Levani, and of course, I could reach a Leaf Blade before they do Fire Fang farm me down. But unfortunately, that is not the case. We do not live the Play Rough. They can now go for a Power Up Punch, double resisted, but it takes out the Frillish. And unfortunately, despite actually flipping switch advantage there, I do end up losing that game. But GG's up home there into the next battle. We see Credilli in the lead. So I'm actually not going to throw on very good timing here, just to guarantee I can throw an Exeter before the opponent does inevitably go for a Rock Tomb and debuff my attack. Now, we're going to shield up the Rock Tomb there. Honestly, maybe I didn't need to go for the Exeter straight away because I will need a second charge move to get the KO anyways. But either way, the opponent going to no-shield. Kind of surprising up against a Credilli. But either way, I'm now going to swap into my Frillish. I'm waiting for the opponent to throw their charge move. And the opponent is finally going to throw. But they have farmed up a ton of energy. But it is the resisted overheat. Now, they go for the overheat there because actually, now they can come in with their Jellicent, shield once, maybe tank one Nightshade. But they should actually now be able to go for a full Hex farm down, which is definitely not ideal for me. That probably was the right play on the opponent's end. However, it doesn't really matter too much for me. We can come in with Levani. Unless they're running Ice Beam, I should be able to tank a Shadow Ball here. Not super comfortably, but I will force the opponent to throw, and I don't mind that whatsoever. I'm just going to let Levani go down. They should still be switch locked, so we come in with Kabuto. We get the Mud Shot farm down, and this should be game over. Of course, Kabuto once again going to resist everything they can throw. I let the first move go through. They do reach a second sludge, but I should now be able to outpace them to back-to-back Aqua Jets. So I use my final shield. We get to back-to-back there, and we are going for the first one. Aqua Jet number 1 grabs the final shield. And of course, from this range, we've seen this already. Aqua Jet will be enough damage to take out the Galarian Weezing, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. See Levani into a Shadow Mawile once again. So, once again, going to say swap into that Frillish. And once again, we're met with a Jellicent. So, this is probably going to be the exact same team. I believe it was Yonkers that showcased this team. So, at this point, we're going to do the exact same thing here. Fight for switch advantage. Make sure we get switch advantage. At this point, I'm going to use my shield here. I will overfarm ever so slightly, but actually, they go for the Shadow Ball. So, I can go for one Hex, fire off the Nightshade here. The opponent probably just lets us go through at this point, and they do exactly that. So this point, the opponent's going to come back in with their Shadow Mawile. Fine with me. We can go straight for another Nightshade. Nightshade going to be shielded by the opponent, and the opponent has to commit to a Play Rough here to get the KO, or potentially a 9-head if they are running it. And the opponent does go for Play Rough. It takes us out there, but now I can come in with the Kabuto, and the opponent swaps into a Shadow Lapras. So at this point, I go straight for Rock Tomb, dealing huge damage. I then swap into Levani, and the opponent actually makes a really smart play there, not throwing a charge move at all. And maybe I should have stopped attacking there, but then they throw a charge move here. Power Up Punch is resisted damage. I don't think there's really any reason for them to throw there. Instead, they should have committed to a full Fire Fang farm down. And as a result, all I have to do here is correctly shield up the charge move. The Mud Shot damage should be enough damage to take out this Mawile. I'm able to get the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. See another Shadow Tentacruel in the lead. So, going to say swap into the Frillish, and the opponent is choosing to stay in initially. And actually, I'm able to reach a Nightshade before they swap out. So, Nightshade, of course, going to hit for neutral damage. It does respectable damage there. The opponent can only throw a resisted charge move, so I'm fine to no shield. They go for Acid Spray, debuffing my defense by 2 stages. And now they come in with a Ferrothorn. So, I will not be able to flip this matchup. However, we do have, of course, done a lot of damage up against the Tentacruel. That was very grammatically incorrect, but either way, we've done a lot of damage up against that Tentacruel before they swapped out. We are now seeing the opponent goes for a Mirror Shot there before going for a full Bullet Seed farm down. So at this point, we're going to come back in with Levani, and I should be able to live a Flash Cannon, so I'm happy to no-shield this. Although maybe I should have... No, never mind. They've already shown Mirror Shot, so that's obviously why I no-shielded. The opponent comes back in with their Tentacruel. We go for Leaf Blade. I'm now going to swap into my Kabuto, and I'm going to shield, as I do have 2 shields here. I do realize, of course, Ferrothorn does have quite a lot of energy, so I expect the opponent to come in and throw straight away. So I actually opt not to throw here. Instead, go for the extra Mud Shot. They bait with a Mirror Shot again, and they reach a last-second charge move. However, this should just be another Mirror Shot, and it is. So we get the farm down. but they've got Superior in the back, and all shields are down. Superior definitely core breaks the team when that is the case, as they're able to reach an aerial ace. It's going to hit for double super effective damage. Despite being debuffed, it gets the one shot, and they can just Vine Whip, farm down my Kabuto, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. But GG's top opponent there into next battle. See another Lapras in the lead. So the opponent is staying in initially. I'm going to overfarm here. The opponent eventually swaps into a Bomber Snow. So I'm holding onto the energy. I can now fire off the X-Scissor. X-Scissor grabs a shield. I'm going to try and swap and catch a resisted Weather Ball, but it does not work out. And now, unfortunately, this is a really awkward situation. Energy Ball going to hit for double super effective, but they bait with an Icy Wind. So that's why I was unable to catch a Weather Ball, because they're not running Weather Ball. So instead, they just didn't have the energy. But even debuffed, a Rock Tomb gets the KO there. They come in with Shadow Empoleon. I'm just going to go for a Rock Tomb here, hoping maybe this allows me to reach an Aqua Jet before they farm me down. It's not the case. Unfortunately, we just barely miss out, but it doesn't really matter. I can come in with the Frillish. They are debuffed. This is not going to do much damage whatsoever. They go for the Drill Peck. They're going to go and fire a second Charge Move. Fine with me. I expect the opponent will eventually swap back into Lapras here, but we are going to swap out straight away into Levani, bank a Nightshade on my Frillish. Leaf Blade coming through, gonna do big damage. I can reach another Leaf Blade up against the Lapras, and of course, all shields are down. It gets the KO there. They come back in with Empoleon. They need to get the farm down, but they're not able to do so. I can actually go for a BM, uncharge the X-Scissor, still gets the KO up against the Shadow Empoleon, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's top there into next battle. See another Tentacruel in the lead. So once again, gonna say swap into my Frillish, and the opponent responds with a Galarian Weezing, which is actually fine with me unless they're running Brutal Swing. The opponent is gonna go for a Sludge, so clearly not on Brutal Swing, so that's huge for me. We can fire off the Nightshade here. I farmed up two back-to-back Charge Moves. We grab a shield with the first one. We can go for a second Nightshade here. Nightshade number 2 is gonna be no shielded. It doesn't do that much damage, but likewise, if they go for an Overheat or a Sludge, neither are gonna do much damage up against my Frillish, and I can now overfarm by 1 Hex, go for the Nightshade once again, outpacing them to the Charge Move. Nightshade grabs the final shield. At this point, I might as well fight for switch advantage here. At worst, I have to use a single shield here, and I can still get the KO, win switch advantage, and grab both shields from the opponent. So Nightshade gets the KO there. The opponent will be able to come back in with the Tentacruel and actually go for a fully resisted Poison Jab farm down, but they swap back into a Ferrothorn. So at this point, fine with me. They are now switch locked, so I do not mind tanking a Flash Cannon. Flash Cannon going to do quite a lot of damage in this matchup, but I just don't care because they're not going to be able to snipe me with the Poison Jab damage from that Tentacruel. So we fire off the X-Scissor. X-Scissor does some decent damage. I'm going to go for the next X-Scissor here, throwing just before they reach the next Charge Move, and then I will be swapping straight away into my Kabuto, and this should be game over. The opponent recognizing it instantly, and so they just concede the match. So, GG's top opponent there into the next battle. See a Jellicent in the lead, so a greatly matchup for me. The opponent's going to say swap, and I make a huge mistake here. I just assumed that was going to be a Marwile coming in, so I swap into my Frillish just because it's the top one, so it's easier to swap into quickly without taking any Fire Fang damage. But that is not the right play here, as they come in with a Klefki. I probably could have shielded and maybe outpaced into the next Charge Move there, but either way, it's not a matchup that I would be winning in the 2-shield scenario, so if the opponent really wanted to, they could fight for switch advantage there. So instead, I take a shield advantage, going to come in with my Kabuto. The opponent does farm up to the play rough there, so now I can overfarm quite considerably, not actually as much as maybe I should have done, but either way, Aqua Jet gets the KO. Just the Astonish damage has got me into the yellow health range, so not ideal for me. I'm going to fire for Rock Tomb here and just hoping that they don't have a really hard answer to Levani in the back. The opponent does not throw a Charge Move there, and they've got Galarian Weezing. So if I'd have just swapped into my Kabuto, I think this game would have been pretty comfortable for me. But that misclick, swapping into Frillish, just trying to be as quick as possible, not to take that Fire Fang damage from the Marwile that was not even a Marwile, has unfortunately cost me in this game. But here we farm up. We're going to go for the Leaf Blade, throwing on the TMP tie, and unfortunately, it's not quite enough damage there. We don't even grab the final shield. Sludge easily takes out Levani. The opponent comes back in with the Jellicent. They've got a Shadow Ball loaded. The opponent full sends the Shadow Ball, taking out Kabuto, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's top end there into the next battle. We see Hisuian Electrode in the lead, so a great matchup for me, of course. Going to resist the electric type damage, or if they go for Swift, we're still going to take minimal damage from that. We're going to see the opponent's going to swap into Mantine. I actually go for a Leaf Blade there, chipping, because I realize Rock Tomb won't quite be enough damage to get the full on one shot, and Mud Shot is, of course, double resisted and non-stab, so it makes it a very awkward farm down. So instead, we come in with the Kabuto after chipping with that Leaf Blade. I farmed up to 100 energy. Rock Tomb gets the KO there. I just just blind throw straight away, assuming Electrode comes back in, but they actually come in with a Dugong, and of course, they're going to take super effective damage from the Rock Tomb, and I'm able to reach another Rock Tomb here before the opponent throws a charge move. So Rock Tomb grabs the shield, the final shield from the opponent. At this point, I'm just going to let the Kabuto go down, but the opponent baits with an Icy Wind there for some reason. Now they're forced to swap back into Electrode. We come in with Levani. I'm going to no shield as it is just a Swift, go straight for Exeter here, and at this point I realize I can try and go for a 2-shield flex up against my opponent, so it's exactly what I'm going to go for. So at this point, I'm going to no shield this. The opponent is going to full send the Drill Run, but Drill Run just doesn't do much damage up against Frillish whatsoever. Of course, Hex and Nightshade hitting for neutral damage in this matchup whilst I am resisting the Ice Shards from the opponent, and we've already seen non-stab Drill Run, not going to do much damage here. We're going to overfarm by 1 Hex here, and this should put them into range where Nightshade actually doesn't quite get the KO, but it doesn't matter. 1 more Hex gets the farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Galarian Weezing in the lead once again. So once again, we're actually going to stay in this matchup, look to catch the move, and I'm able to successfully catch a Sludge onto my Frillish. Well, I assume it's a Sludge yet. It is a Sludge there. Obviously, if they did go for a Brutal Swing, that would be kind of embarrassing for me. But either way, the opponent comes in with their Shadow Venusaur. They're going straight for Frenzy Plant, fine with me. Happy to let the Frillish go down. Really happy to bait out the Shadow Venusaur, keeping it away from my Kabuto in the back. We're now going to come in with Levani, get a farm up to back-to-back X's. I'm hoping this is enough damage to get the KO, and it does exactly that. They come back in with the Weezing, and I'm going to do it for a second time in the same battle. Catch the Resisted Sludge onto my Kabuto this time around, and the opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Lapras. So, of course, I'm going to shield this up here. From this range, Sparkling Aria probably does get the KO. Now I can go for a debuff with a Rock Tomb, so we're going straight for Rock Tomb here. Rock Tomb is going to be no-shielded by the opponent. I don't really understand why they didn't shield that, but at this point, I'm just going straight for the Aqua Jet. Aqua Jet is going to get the KO there, but can I reach another charge move up against the Weezing? I realize I would probably just barely get there, but I'm actually going to save that energy, come in with my Levani, go for a Leaf Blade, and can I reach 2 more Leaf Blades up against this Weezing? It's going to be very close. The opponent fires off the Sludge. We farm up 2 back-to-back Leaf Blades here. The first one is, of course, going to grab the final shield from the opponent. Actually, I wasn't quite at back-to-back, but either way, it doesn't really matter. Leaf Blade number 2 doesn't quite get the KO, though, so at this point, can Kabuto live 1 Fairy Wind? Yes, we're able to do so, just barely, living with 1 HP and a Dream, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, another Galarian Weezing in the lead. So once again, gonna stay in, wait for the opponent to try and throw, but no, they actually hold onto the energy. They swap into a Lantern, and that is definitely not ideal for me. We're going to go straight for Nightshade here. Nightshade going to do respectable damage, even though Lantern is quite a bulky Pokemon. I'm going to shield this. The opponent does full send a Thunderbolt, and because of the energy generation of Hex this season, I'm now going to be able to reach 2 more Nightshades before the opponent does reach another Thunderbolt. So we're going for another Nightshade here, grabbing a shield with that first one. The next Nightshade is going to be no shielded, and at this point I'm thinking, you know what, I kind of need to fight for switch advantage, get my tongue twisted there, but we're able to get the full farm down, and let's see what the opponent comes in with. They come in with a Ferrothorn, and now things are going to get really tricky for me. We go for the Nightshade. I'm only reaching 1 charge move, so should have just gone for a nice beam there, but either way, they get the full farm down. At this point, I'm expecting the opponent to swap out and try and snipe with the Overheat from their Weezing, and it backfires massively because for some reason, they went for a Power Whip up against my Levani. I don't even know what the heck even happened there, but either way, that's going to be game over. Unfortunately, tried to play it smart. It did not work out for me at all. They go for the Overheat, taking out Levani, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there into the final battle of this video, leading into Lapras. The opponent save swaps into a Pelipper, and this is actually quite awkward for me. Of course, these mud shots are resisted damage. I'm going to go for the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb, I'm going to grab a shield. It debuffs their attack here, but still, these Weather Balls are going to chip over time. And of course, even these wing attacks, whilst they are resisted, they're adding up a lot more than my resisted mud shots. So I'm going to shield up the next Weather Ball here. I can now go for a second Rock Tomb, but if they double shield, I'm not confident that I will actually be able to win this matchup. So what we're going to do, I realize I can bank the energy, swap into my Frillish. I'm able to catch a resisted Weather Ball here. Weather Ball, of course, double debuff now and resisted, doesn't do much damage. They swap into a Razor Leaf Torterra, which is really interesting to see. But unfortunately for them, we've got Ice Beam. It gets the one shot up against the Torterra. They come in with the Lapras. And again, it's going to be another matchup here where Friddish can reach multiple Nightshades up against the Lapras coming in. First one, I'm going to do respectable damage there. And I'm just barely able to reach a second Nightshade before they fully farm me down. Nightshade gets them into the red health range. I actually swap out there. Maybe I shouldn't have done that because the opponent actually throws immediately there. Wow, what the hell was that voice crack? We throw immediately there, and they do throw another Sparkling Aria, but that's okay. I can go for the Leaf Blade. I realize they are not going to reach a Hurricane on their Pelipper. Leaf Blade gets the KO there, and I can now just commit to another Leaf Blade up against the Lapras coming in. And of course, from about 5 HP remaining, Leaf Blade easily takes out the Lapras, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. And if you want to take your support even further, you can now become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has already become a channel member. Your support is greatly appreciated, and with that being said, thank you all so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.